Hi guys, today we are going to find out what if the internet was never invented. You wake up on this Tuesday morning in July 2025, stretching as sunlight filters through your bedroom curtains. Something feels fundamentally off about the world around you, though you can't quite put your finger on it. The silence is the first thing that strikes you. No notification pings, no buzzing devices, no digital hum of connectivity. Your smartphone sits on the nightstand, but it's just a basic device for calls and texts, nothing more. You stumble to the kitchen and flip on the radio for news, realizing this is your only real-time connection to the outside world. The morning feels slower, more deliberate, as if time itself moves differently in this reality. You probably won't survive this digital detox if you're used to our hyper-connected world. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment below with your location and local time. I'd love to know where you're watching from. Now, sit back and let's dive into today's alternate journey together. You reach for what should be your laptop, but find only a typewriter collecting dust. You need to call your best friend who lives 3 states away, but the conversation will cost you precious minutes on your phone bill. Each long-distance call requires careful planning. You can't just casually chat whenever a random thought pops into your head. You sit down to write a physical letter instead, pulling out actual paper and a pen that feels foreign in your digital age hands. The process feels painfully slow as you carefully craft each sentence, knowing there's no backspace button, no spell check, no instant delivery. You realize your friend won't receive this message for at least 3 days, maybe a week if the postal service is running behind. Video calls with family are completely impossible. You can only hear their voices, never see their faces unless you physically visit. Coordinating group plans becomes a logistical nightmare of phone tag, with no group chats or instant messaging to streamline the process. You spend an entire afternoon trying to reach 5 friends to plan a simple dinner, leaving voicemails and waiting for callbacks. The isolation feels profound when you realize how difficult it is to maintain relationships across any significant distance. Your social circle naturally shrinks to only those people you can physically meet or afford to call regularly. You discover that fax machines have become the high-tech solution for sending documents quickly. They're mechanical whirring filling office spaces everywhere. You wake up hungry for information about current events, but your only sources are the morning newspaper and scheduled TV broadcasts. The newspaper arrived hours ago, but the breaking news it contains is already 12 hours old by the time you read it. You flip through pages of dense text, searching for the stories that matter to you, with no search function or personalized feeds. Television news comes in rigid time slots. You either catch the 6 p.m. broadcast or wait until 11 p.m. for the next update. Research for any project means a physical trip to the library, where you spend hours hunting through card catalogs and dusty reference books. The librarian becomes your human search engine, helping you navigate through encyclopedias and periodicals that may or may not contain what you need. You can't fact-check claims instantly. If someone tells you something questionable, verification requires days of library research or phone calls to experts. Conspiracy theories and misinformation spread more slowly but also persist longer, as there's no easy way to debunk false claims in real time. Academic research crawls along at a glacial pace, with scholars spending months tracking down papers in different libraries across the country. You realize that knowledge has returned to being a scarce commodity, controlled by institutions and geographic access rather than being freely available. The digital divide doesn't exist because there's no digital realm. Instead, there's an information divide based on physical proximity to libraries, universities, and major cities. You need a new television, but instead of comparing prices online in minutes, you're embarking on a full-day shopping expedition across town. Armed with newspaper ads, yellow pages, and a notebook, you plot your route to hit every electronics store within driving distance. At the first store, you write down model numbers, prices, and features by hand, creating your own comparison spreadsheet on paper. The salesperson becomes your primary source of product information, and you have no way to verify their claims or read customer reviews. You drive to the second store, then the third, spending hours in traffic and burning through expensive gasoline for each location. By afternoon, your handwritten notes are getting messy, and you're struggling to remember which store had the better warranty policy. Price matching becomes impossible without instant access to competitor pricing. You're at the mercy of each store's posted prices. You discover that many items simply aren't available locally, and special ordering means waiting weeks with no tracking information. The concept of impulse buying nearly disappears when every purchase requires significant time investment and physical effort to research. Your shopping list grows longer because it makes sense to buy everything you might need in one exhausting trip rather than multiple smaller ones. You realize that consumer choice has actually narrowed dramatically. You can only buy what's physically stocked within reasonable driving distance. You settle into your living room for an evening of entertainment, but your options are limited to whatever happens to be broadcast at this exact moment. The TV guide becomes your Bible, and you plan your entire evening around scheduled programming that you can't pause, rewind, or skip. Missing your favorite show means waiting weeks for a rerun, with no on-demand options or streaming alternatives available. You drive to the video rental store, hoping they still have copies of the movie you want to watch, only to find the last one was rented an hour ago. Music discovery happens through radio DJ recommendations, and you buy entire albums based on hearing just one song you liked. You can't skip tracks you dislike, and creating custom playlists requires physically arranging cassette tapes or CDs in the order you want. Social entertainment revolves around shared experiences. Everyone watches the same shows because there are only a few channels to choose from. Water cooler conversations at work center around last night's episode, because you all saw the same content at the same time. Boredom becomes a real problem when nothing good is on TV, and you're forced to read books, play board games, or actually talk to family members. The concept of binge watching doesn't exist. You consume entertainment at the pace creators intended, one episode per week. You realize that cultural moments happen more organically when millions of people experience the same content simultaneously. You open the classified ad section of the newspaper, scanning through tiny print for job opportunities within commuting distance of your home. Remote work doesn't exist as a concept. Every job requires your physical presence in an office, factory, or store location. Your career options are severely limited by geography, and moving to a new city for work means starting your entire social and professional network from scratch. Freelancing becomes nearly impossible without digital platforms to connect you with clients or showcase your portfolio to a global audience. You mail your resume and cover letter to potential employers, then wait weeks for any response, with no way to track whether they even received your application. Job interviews require expensive travel, and you might spend hundreds of dollars visiting multiple cities just to find the right opportunity. Networking happens exclusively through in-person events, professional associations, and word-of-mouth referrals from people you've actually met. Your salary potential is capped by local market conditions. You can't compete for higher-paying positions in expensive cities while living in affordable areas. Company research before interviews involves library trips to find annual reports and newspaper articles about potential employers. Professional development depends entirely on local colleges, seminars, and workshops. There are no online courses or virtual conferences available. You realize that economic mobility has become much more difficult when your earning potential is tied directly to your physical location. You need to pay your monthly bills, so you gather up envelopes, stamps, and your checkbook for an afternoon of financial administration. Each bill payment requires writing a check, addressing an envelope, and making a trip to the post office or mailbox, turning a 5-minute task into an hour-long process. Banking means standing in line at your local branch during business hours, watching the clock tick away your lunch break as you wait for a teller. You carry cash everywhere because credit card processing is slow and unreliable, making you a walking target for theft and pickpocketing. Transferring money to friends or family requires wire transfers that cost significant fees and take several business days to complete. Checking your account balance means calling the bank's automated phone system or visiting in person, with no instant access to your financial information. Investment research involves requesting prospectuses by mail and reading through dense paper documents without any interactive tools or real-time market data. You discover that financial fraud is both easier and harder to commit. Easier because verification systems are manual, but harder because paper trails are extensive. Budgeting becomes a monthly ritual with actual calculators, spreadsheets you create by hand, and filing cabinets full of paper receipts and statements. International transactions are so complicated and expensive that you effectively live in a financial bubble restricted to your home country. You realize that the democratization of financial services has completely reversed, returning us to an era where banking is a privilege rather than a convenience. You want to support a cause you believe in, but organizing grassroots movements requires months of planning, physical meetings, and paper flyers distributed by hand. Social activism moves at the speed of telephone trees and mailed newsletters, making urgent responses to breaking issues nearly impossible to coordinate. Fundraising for charitable causes depends entirely on door-to-door canvassing, bake sales, and local events that can only reach your immediate community. Political campaigns rely on expensive television ads and direct mail pieces, giving wealthy candidates and corporations disproportionate influence over public opinion. You watch as important social issues gain traction incredibly slowly, taking years or decades to build the momentum that might have happened in weeks online. Boycotts require extensive coordination through traditional media and word of mouth, making it difficult to pressure companies for rapid policy changes. Citizen journalism doesn't exist. You depend entirely on professional reporters who may not cover the stories that matter most to your community. Organizing protests involves reserving public spaces weeks in advance and hoping people show up based on flyers and phone calls alone. International solidarity movements struggle to coordinate across borders, as communication delays make real-time collaboration impossible. You realize that powerful institutions face much less accountability when citizens can't quickly organize, share information, or amplify minority voices. Social change becomes the privilege of those with existing resources, connections, and access to traditional media platforms. You're working on a research project, but collaboration with experts in other countries requires weeks of postal correspondence and expensive international phone calls. Scientific breakthroughs happen in isolation, with researchers unaware that colleagues across the globe are working on identical problems and duplicating efforts. Peer review processes take months longer, as manuscripts travel by mail between authors, editors, and reviewers in different continents. Medical discoveries that could save lives spread slowly through medical journals and conferences, taking years to reach practitioners in remote areas. Technology transfer between universities and companies crawls along through face-to-face meetings and paper documentation that can easily be lost or delayed. Innovation clusters fail to form naturally because brilliant minds remain scattered and disconnected, unable to easily find and collaborate with like-minded researchers. Patents and intellectual property disputes become more complex when inventors can't quickly search existing research or communicate with patent offices. You watch as humanity's collective problem-solving capacity diminishes dramatically when experts can't rapidly share knowledge and build upon each other's work. Open-source development is practically impossible. Software projects remain proprietary because coordinating distributed teams requires infrastructure that doesn't exist. The pace of human progress slows to a crawl as each discovery must be laboriously communicated through traditional channels before others can build upon it. You realize that innovation has become a luxury of well-funded institutions rather than something that can emerge from passionate individuals working together across boundaries. You step back and survey this alternate world, seeing humanity fractured into millions of isolated islands of experience and knowledge. Communities remain insular and self-contained, with local prejudices and misconceptions persisting for generations, without exposure to different perspectives. Cultural exchange happens only through expensive travel or traditional media, creating stark divides between different regions and social classes. You witness how misinformation spreads just as quickly through word of mouth and traditional media, but corrections and fact-checking take much longer to penetrate communities. Economic opportunities cluster around major cities, leaving rural areas increasingly disconnected from global markets and innovation. The democratization of information that we take for granted never happened. Knowledge remains concentrated in institutions, libraries, and among the educated elite. Small businesses struggle to compete without access to global markets, sophisticated marketing tools, or efficient supply chain coordination. You realize that many of the social movements, scientific breakthroughs, and cultural phenomena that shaped our modern world simply never occurred in this timeline. Human potential remains largely untapped as brilliant minds in developing countries lack access to the same educational resources and collaborative opportunities. The world feels simultaneously smaller and larger. Smaller because your daily experience is limited to your immediate geographic area, yet larger because distant places feel truly foreign and unreachable. You understand that without digital connectivity, humanity has remained a collection of separate tribes rather than evolving into the interconnected global civilization we know today. As you close your eyes and reflect on this alternate reality, you begin to understand the profound weight of what never came to pass. The internet wasn't just a technology, it was humanity's nervous system, connecting every corner of consciousness into a living, breathing network of shared experience. Without it, we remained trapped in the limitations of geography, economics, and circumstance that had constrained human potential for millennia. You realize that innovation, creativity, and progress aren't just individual pursuits. They require the collision of diverse minds and the rapid exchange of ideas across boundaries. The digital revolution didn't just change how we communicate. It fundamentally altered what it means to be human in a connected world. Perhaps most remarkably, you understand that the internet didn't just democratize information. It democratized opportunity itself, allowing anyone with talent and determination to reach global audiences. In this alternate timeline, humanity remained fragmented, slower, and ultimately less than the sum of its parts. The question that haunts you now is this: if we take our hyper-connected world for granted, what other transformative technologies might we be overlooking today? What innovations are we dismissing as impossible or impractical that could reshape human civilization just as dramatically as the internet did? Sometimes the most profound changes come not from the technologies we can imagine, but from the ones that seem utterly unremarkable until they connect us in ways we never thought possible.